In late November, at long last we saw the release of the first volume of the 5th season of Stranger Things. Originally I was going to be on the ball and make a couple of videos about it when it was super current, but I ended up getting really sick right as it was releasing, and so now I'm dealing with the backlog of a whole heap of content. Now the episodes are really quite long and they have a whole lot of content in them, so I do think I'll do actual individual episode breakdowns / reviews as well, but I think we should probably start by doing a full season review just to get the more general stuff out of the way. I have to say that for me, Stranger Things 5 did somewhat come out of nowhere, at least in terms of the hype that I had for it. I have been a long-time fan of the franchise like a lot of people right from the release of the first season, and with each new installment my hype only continued to grow. However, then the delays started to get more and more pronounced, and I'm not trying to complain about this sort of thing because ultimately I do get it. It takes a long time to make a season, and they also had to contend with COVID and the strikes over the course of their run, so they were going to take longer and longer to be able to get the seasons out. I guess that it's just over the years my hype went largely dormant, and so if you asked me a couple of months ago before any of the teasers or whatnot were out whether I was all that excited, I probably would have said, nah, not really. Not because I was actively set against it or anything like that, I guess I just didn't care all that much at that stage. I think this happens to a lot of people when there are particularly long off seasons for a show or a film series. Since there's no new content, no end to the drought in sight, you fall off the wagon and move on to other things. Some shows probably don't survive that sort of gap, but it's clear that this is not the case for Stranger Things. Earlier this year, we started getting more and more promotional materials and chatter about the season, and then we started to get more teasers and trailers and first look footage, and suddenly, my hype returned in full force, and it became all I could really think about for quite some time. I was curious as to how well it would do, to tell you the truth. I've been badly burned in the past by shows that were unable to stick the landing, and that went from some of the biggest things on TV to forgotten works that only get mentioned when people can talk about how the ending sucked and how the early seasons were peak storytelling. Would Stranger Things fall into that sort of trap? Would the final season crash and burn? Would the long gaps impact its viewership and see the hype fade and dwindle? These might seem like pretty ridiculous questions now, but the reality is that sometimes you can't fend off those intrusive thoughts that give you the worst possible scenario and force their way into your head. Thankfully though, it seems that this is not what's happened, and the show is both well received and posting some pretty massive numbers on Netflix. In terms of English language shows on Netflix, the show's doing some very good numbers overall. The way that Netflix measures this all-time list is taking the views from the first 91 days, and it hasn't quite cracked into that list yet. That being said, in its first week it did a monster number of 59 million views. Then in its second week it did 23 million views, which probably means it's about a week away from making it into the overall all-time top 10, and then with Volume 2 and the finale still to come, I expect it's going to make a very deep run into that list, probably beating out both Stranger Things 4 and Adolescence to make it into the second slot. Whether it can beat out Wednesday Season 1 though is probably a whole different matter entirely, given that it sits an additional 100 million clear of second place. I'm not saying it's impossible, it's just a very tall order to try and challenge a record that's so far ahead of the closest competition. That being said, I do hope it continues to do very well because I simply think the show was awesome, and who doesn't love records being broken, right? It's fun. In terms of the overall reception, it does seem to be tracking very well, and it isn't just skating by on reputation and name value alone. It's not pulling a Game of Thrones as of right now, but at the same time, we only have that first volume released so far, and there's still a lot of time for it to crash and burn or not turn out the way people wanted it to. As of right now though, it's tracking well. It has an 84% critical approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes and an 83% audience score. It's currently the lowest approval rating for a season that we've seen for the show, but the drop-off isn't very extreme, so I don't think it matters all that much. For me though, so far I'm actually enjoying it a lot more than I have in years. In my eyes, the first 2 seasons especially is something really special, and I really like the 3rd season as well, but then 4, I don't know, I did like it, but it just didn't hit that same level for me either. This though is probably up there with season 3, and depending on how the ending goes, it could move up or down, but based on how volume 1 wrapped up, I'm expecting it's going to keep on climbing in my esteem because there really is a whole lot to love. In terms of the visual side of things, I think the show just continues to look really incredible. I think for the majority of the characters, a lot of the awkward designs that cropped up during season 4 have gone the way of the dodo, and this was especially important for Will, who's being presented as a deeply important character now on par with Eleven in terms of his prominence and power. That means they really couldn't keep that truly terrible bowl cut which peaked in awfulness in season 4. Yeah, it's obviously still there, but at the same time it's looking better and it's not overly distracting. I just don't think you could possibly get anybody to take the sorcerer scene seriously if he still had his Stranger Things 4 hair. It would seem utterly ridiculous. In terms of the monster designs, the Demogorgons continue to look really awesome and intimidating, and honestly, this scene made them feel even scarier in terms of how they move. I also like that Vecna got an upgrade, as previously, his body kind of reminded me of the live-action version of the Grinch played by Jim Carrey, and it's hard to take that type of thing seriously as a result. The new and improved version though, more Grootified, is really intimidating and alien. It makes him seem like a true final boss type character, although at the same time, depending on what you believe, that remains to be seen, because there's clearly a lot of stuff surrounding Henry/Vecna we don't understand just yet, and there's a lot of time left to play. I don't think the runtimes for Volume 2 have 100% been confirmed, but having looked around, one episode clocks in at 58 minutes, the other 2 are over an hour each. More specifically, Shock Jock is 1 hour and 17 minutes, Escape from Camazotz is 58 minutes, and then The Bridge is 1 hour and 37 minutes. Then you combine that with a finale that's set to run for 2 hours and 5 minutes, and suddenly everything's wide open, and pretty much anything could happen. I think visually the only thing I had major issues with was one of the action sequences. sequences. For the most part, the action was really exciting and intense, kept you on the edge of your seat the whole time, and could be massively emotional. I'm talking stuff like the attack on the Wheeler house, or then the party laying an ambush for the Demogorgon at the Turnbow house. Those were all good. I just raised my eyebrows a little bit at the big battle of the Demogorgons versus the soldiers, where despite the monsters just getting riddled with bullets again and again, they wouldn't go down and they crushed everybody. At a certain point, getting hit that much is ridiculous without them going down, and whilst I think it was really awesome and shot really well, it was also a little bit goofy. In terms of the acting, I thought that once again the first volume was really good. I thought the OG members of the party were really great, probably with an emphasis on Noah Schnapp, who was given a lot to work with this season overall and had a lot of important moments. I also really liked a lot of the more minor cast members. I mean, Derek Turnbow and now Holly Wheeler's recast are really great additions to the franchise. I mean, rather typically, there was a little bit of hate for the poor kid playing Derek, but by the end of the season, I think he managed to win everybody over, playing a spoiled, asshole, annoying child really well, but then managing to flip that switch from dipshit Derek to delightful Derek. It still kind of pisses me off that he was ever getting hate and that it likely stemmed from the way that he looked. But that's fandom these days. Hell, not even these days, it's always been like this. People get feral at the drop of a hat. Just look at the reaction to Jake Lloyd in Star Wars The Phantom Menace and how the fans reacted to him at the time. It's pretty disgusting stuff, and it's sad that nothing seems to have changed, except now, discourse can more directly reach the actors thanks to the internet and social media landscape. Then there's a new actress for Holly who had a much bigger role this season as opposed to previously, and I think she's great as well and had a lot of really good scenes with the existing cast. I thought her stuff with Karen was really fun, and she played her part really well when the Demogorgon was trying to get her. I also thought her big dialogue sequence with Mike was really compelling and helped to flesh out the Wheeler family a little bit more, since Mike was very much distanced from them for seasons at a time. Here they were both really able to get across that older brother, younger sister vibe perfectly, in the same way as Jonathan will, particularly during season 1 flashbacks when he's showing him music and stuff like that. I also really enjoyed her scenes with Henry/Mr. Watson, which were really suspense-filled and eerie, and then her stuff with Max in the Dream Realm too. I just think she's a really good young actress, and she's going to continue to prove herself going forward into the latter half of the story. That being said, once again I am depressed that instead of simply celebrating that she's talented and fits seamlessly into the cast and story, there are actual creeps online lusting after this child. This happens with many young actresses, I'm sure, but I don't know, it felt particularly severe in this instance. Pretty sure she was only 12 to 13 when she was filming this season too, so people are disgusting and it's very sad to see. This then takes us to the story, and I'm not going to break everything down now because in the end, I do want to do each episode as its own video, seeing as they're really long and have a lot to talk about within each one. That being said, I do want to talk about some of the stuff that I really liked and then the stuff I didn't care much for. For me, I think the biggest and most exciting part of the season has been seeing Will's character evolve. For so long he's been idle, and whilst he was very story important all along, at the same time, it did feel like he never really got a lot of key moments after he was freed from the Mind Flayer's control. Here the story actually addresses that fact, and that Joyce pretty much wraps him in bubble wrap and doesn't let him contribute or really put himself in any slight danger at all, even when it comes to trying to save Holly, a little girl who's in mortal peril, or when Karen and Ted, who have been hosting her at their house all this time, are put into critical condition at the hospital. However, he, with the encouragement of Robin, sneaks out and they enact their own plan, which puts them on the trail of what Vecna's been planning and allows them to set a trap with Derek Turnbow. Will continues to get more and more hero moments, they flesh out his feelings for Mike, and he and Robin have this big heart-to-heart where she tries to let him down gently about unrequited love. Then at the end of the volume, he's finally able to accept who he is, thanks in large part to Robin's heart-to-heart with him, and he unlocks his own power, which seems likely to mimic Vecna's control over the Upside Down and the Demo creatures. That part of the finale was just so awesome, not gonna lie. I also really enjoyed Dustin's angst arc, which felt very raw and realistic, as well as Mike stepping into a leadership role more heavily as an older brother/mentor type figure, not just with Holly, but the other kids they are trying to rescue as well. And whilst it wasn't popular when it was released, and I also wasn't much of a fan, I do like that they're coming back around and integrating some of the stuff from season 2 episode 7. I think it would be good to flesh out that side of things further and have another alternate perspective on what Henry's like. Plus, I just think it would be nice to further flesh out the dynamic she had with Al, and then toss Hopper into the mix. Oh, and then there's Max and Holly. Their stuff was fun, and I like that Max wasn't just bedbound until the story needs her to wake up. She's still getting involved in the story in a way that makes a lot of sense, and furthers the mystery of what's going on with Vecna in the Dream Realm. However, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. I don't think every story beat hits the same for me. I'm not feeling the love triangle stuff whatsoever, and part of me is just wanting her to cut the cord on both of them and be single at the end of the story. I also think that Jonathan remains deeply underutilized, and his now one major trait he had left, his bond with Will and being his guiding light, has been handed over to Robin. I'm not going to complain about that too much since it enhanced Robin and Will's story, but Jonathan seems like such a pale shadow of what he was in season 1, and it's such a shame. I guess this happens in many ensemble casts where certain characters are going to be left by the wayside, but it's still sad to see. I also wasn't a massive fan of the Hopper and Al story, where once again he's trying too hard to protect her, and she's pushing boundaries trying to prove herself. It really does feel like we're retreading season 2 and 3 here, but at the same time, I'm willing to wait and see whether they flesh it out more and add a bit of nuance to proceedings. I know that his character's supposed to have a lot of built-in trauma surrounding the death of his first daughter, and that this type of thing doesn't just go away, and he's also meant to be a man of a different era, but it does get grating when it's the same old storyline being trotted out again and again. It's the finale, and I wasn't keen on the idea of Al being tied up in this kind of arc for the first half of the episodes, you know? I just think she could be doing more than that, and I'm really keen for them to push forward into new stuff for her character, so hopefully the return of Callie and then Will getting some powers is enough to do just that. If we have yet another couple of episodes of Hopper being overprotective towards Al and not wanting her to fight Vecna, then it's just going to be so frustrating for me. However, just because I'm not keen on everything doesn't mean I think Volume 1 sucked. In the end, the good does far outweigh the bad for me, and I'm really keen for the second volume. I think this could end up being an all-timer of a finale and blow everybody away, but of course, until then, those have all been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of Stranger Things 5 Volume 1? Did you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.